Our presenter tonight, Brent Smith, began his search for Toastmasters just 20 years ago. Prior to joining a club, he has fond memories of visiting many different clubs and open houses. He has been a member of 3 clubs and has been a host and co-host at numerous club open houses and online events. Currently, he is the president of Toasting Excellence, vice president of education of Dallas Toastmaster, and also serving as our Area 43 director. Thank you, Brent. Brent sees this year as a year of opportunity for every Toastmasters club. Just like in 2008, looked like a worldwide economic collapse, but turned out to be the start of a wonderful, powerful recovery. Brent sees this year as the year that we can build the first of many strong and powerful experiences for Toastmasters and their clubs. Welcome to the first Learning Lab of 2022. Grasp new opportunities and regrow your club. Build your open house. Brent Smith.
Thank you, Lori. I wish my mother was here to hear that wonderful introduction. Toastmasters, good to see all of you here tonight. I have a question. You can just show by raise of hand. Either you can do that or you can give the thumbs up signal if you're not on video. But I would like to see who here has been a Toastmaster for longer than 50 years. Okay, longer than 25 years. Okay. And longer than 15 years. So those, you can still give a thumbs up if you've been longer than 25 as well. Great. And how many of you have been a Toastmaster for longer than 5 years? Good. And how many of you have been a Toastmaster for longer than 1 year? I think that includes just about everyone here. And Toastmasters, I have been a member of Toastmasters for 20 years, and even so, I still remember my first visits to the Toastmasters clubs, where I would go around from meeting to meeting or open house event to open house event to see which club I wanted to be a member of. And I think it's interesting because I've talked to several other Toastmasters and heard how they felt and what they were impressed with the club that they joined. We'll have an opportunity to hear from each other on what we found that attracted us to our clubs today. I have also asked several people that I feel are experts in Toastmasters what they feel is the most important thing in open houses that I will share later on. And I also asked members worldwide from the Toastmasters International group, and I got some interesting responses from them as to what attracted them first to Toastmasters with their club meetings, as well as what kept them there. And I think you will find this information very helpful. I first want to say that there is on archive, on record, the open house, the WOW open house Zoom event from our own Leanna Lindquist. She did a great job. I'm not going to try to redo her presentation. I think you ought to listen to that as well. It includes some of the basics of preparation. But I do want to give you a few things from my experience tonight. First of all, here is me. Feel free to call me or to feel free to call or one that was working before. There we go. Or email me here. And I'll come back to this slide at the end of the program as well, so you can write that down. Toastmasters, I find it interesting. There are a few essentials of a club event One of those is the foundation. If you think of building a Toastmasters open house, it's similar to building a house in that you need a good, strong, solid foundation. So what are some of the things that would be a foundation? Now we have a little bit of a smaller gathering tonight than I thought we would. So we could probably use the chat function, but we could also have a few people raise their hand and answer the question. So what would you say would be a good foundation? One of the things that I had heard from the people that I had queried with is to make sure the focus of our foundation is on the new member, on the potential new member and the guest. I have been to open houses before, sadly, where we put tons of time and effort into making a perfect open house. The guests show up, we have 4 or 5 guests, and all the Toastmasters with each other, talking to each other. Oh, did you get this last minute thing done? Where's this decoration? What's happening over here? And the guests say, excuse me, where should I sit? Oh yeah, you can sit over there. Okay, let's talk more about this. And we totally missed the point of why we were having an open house. Yes, they were awe-inspired, but did they know what we were doing? So that is something. What's another thing that would be a foundation? PJ.
Well, along with the question of know what you're doing, I've seen the most successful open houses have a theme or a purpose. If I just say to you, hey, we're having an open house, come visit. Well, okay, well, I got other things I could be doing tonight. But if you have a purpose, like we've had open houses where we had an interview skill workshop, where it was largely like table topics, where we would let people practice job interview questions. So that was the basis, and we advertised it as that. So people knew they could come there and learn how to be more effective in an advertisement. So having a theme would be the summary of that.
Precisely, very good, thank you. I have heard from other respondents, David Bones. I don't know how many of you know him. He said that if you try to please everybody by making a very broad event and you don't have a focus, you end up pleasing no one. So he said, have a theme, have something that you can focus on. Very good, and make it fun too. Thank you, PJ. Is there another? Anyone else want to share a foundation? Very good. Okay. Oh yes, I thought, Jerry, I thought you were going to say something.
Well, I'm formulating my answer, or I guess it goes along with a similar idea. Is it different from a demonstration meeting versus an open house? Or sometimes that needs to be clarified as, are we doing an actual typical meeting and letting people know what Toastmasters is all about and what to expect from that viewpoint? Or is it more of a theme, as PJ said?
Very good. Ellen says food brings people in.
Always.
Online events, which are similar to open houses, if we're still meeting online, where we have an online event and everybody brings their food and they share it, or maybe it's on the background. Maybe it's fun. I've seen hat themes where people are wearing different hats because that's very visible even on Zoom, and other themes as well. Well, these are very important foundations, and I think one of the other F's of that would be the fun that we have. Mark has one.
Well, you want to have it fun, but you also want to have a takeaway of some sort. They need to leave the meeting feeling like they've learned something new or something they can use. So always have a takeaway. You want to have a fun meeting. I like the theme idea, but you want to have a takeaway as well.
Very good. So have it be useful, very important. The other foundations we will get to in just a little bit that I had identified in my research. Another element, essential element of a club event is understanding. Some of the things that we need to understand are which type of a member we're trying to attract. Maybe what is our club good at? What do we do best? But to also understand the challenges that come with open houses. Have you ever said, hey, we'll have an open house, and you put it off, or every meeting you say, hey, we need to have an open house, each officer meeting, but then no date is picked, nobody's assigned, and you come right up to it's like, oh, well, we missed our event. So that comes to our third element, which is now. You need to start planning your events now for a month or two in advance, because then you can do things like finding the speaker. You can do things like getting your information onto the District 7 website, which we'll be talking about. They have a wonderful incentive for us that I will share later on. And the final element is fun. And if you'll notice, foundation, understand, and now, they all add up to fun. If we're well prepared, we can have fun. But we also need to just remember that things don't need to go perfectly. We just need to have fun with what we're doing. Toastmasters. I would now like to move forward a little bit in talking more about foundation. The guests are the focus. They are the main focus. If we lose sight of that, we'll forget our guests. First impressions last. In other words, what people see when they first come in, that's going to last a good long time. The feelings that people have when they first come to a meeting, they remember 20, 30 years later. As I polled the international group, many people said that's what they remembered, is how the people made them feel. When somebody came and sat by them and explained to them what was going on, or when they were impressed with that person, mentioned that person, and that person sent them an email the next day saying, hey, it was great to have you there. They're like, hey, I found a new friend and I'm going to have fun learning. Keep it fun and engaging. Make sure those guests who are our foundation, make sure they have an opportunity to speak. Introduce them at the beginning of the meeting. Have them talk a little bit. Also, give them an opportunity to be the table topics master. Talk with the table topics master ahead of time and say, hey, we want to give guests the opportunity, but not force them to speak. And let them know at the beginning of the meeting, hey, you'll have an opportunity to participate in table topics. And then finally, leave enough time at the end that you can hear from your guests what their experience was. And finally, be sure to follow up with each of those guests. That can be very important. It's usually, as Lyle always tells us, it's usually never a guest will join if they're never asked to join. So why not ask them on the very first time? That's really why they were there, because they are looking for something. I want to open up to conversation here about what we have as our memories of our very first Toastmasters meeting. And I'm going to call on someone because I happen to remember their first meeting. Mark, would you share a little bit about some of your memories of your first Toastmasters meeting? And then
Sure.
Everybody else can be thinking and you can let us know.
Well, I had a very engaging person invite me. It was you, Brent. That's why you invited me and asked me to come. And I thought I'd heard of Toastmasters, but I didn't really have any preconceived ideas. And I came to the meeting, and what impressed me most, I guess, was that everybody looked like they were really glad to be there. They all looked like they wanted to be there. And I heard some great speeches, and I just said, yeah, this is something I could do. I could see me doing this. And I was invited to speak. I don't know if I spoke on our very first meeting, but I'm pretty sure I spoke by the second meeting. I think I did table topics, and they gave me a ribbon for it. So I thought, wow, I can do this. So it was actually a good meeting and my first impressions were very positive. But I think what impressed me most was just how everybody else seemed to really be glad to be there.
Thank you very much, Mark. Absolutely. And we were glad to have you there. And feel free to put your answers in the chat as well to any of these questions. Would anyone else like to share their feelings or their first impressions of their first Toastmaster meetings?
Brent,
Lyle?
I reached out and phoned the phone number for bootstrappers, and I left a message and I got a call back from the one, the only Jan Jackson. If you know Jan Jackson, she called me back from Hawaii where she's on vacation, and she talked to me for a while and she said, yeah, come, I'll be back. And, you know, so I went to the meeting and she was back, and she was such an outgoing person and engaging in that. When you show up at the room, it really, you know, left a mark with you that you know, you were welcome. They wanted you there. And yes, it definitely made a big difference in me joining.
Thank you very much, Lyle. That brings up another point, that an important factor in a person joining, and an important part of our foundation, is that the club be solid. If we're having an open house, we need to have it together ourselves. We need to be findable. Check on the website, make sure your phone number is actually there. Check and make sure it's visible, that your Facebook and your website are up to date. Make sure your members are on board with this. Thank you all for sharing. That brings us to our next portion.
Real quick, Brent, if I could ask, just Jim had his hand raised, and
Oh,
I think
Jim.
he wanted to ask, share something.
Forgive me, Jim.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that when I first, talking about first impressions, when I first came to a Toastmasters meeting, I was surprised at how many people had pens and pencils out and paper, and they were writing notes during the meeting, all the different things. There's stuff going on. People were writing stuff down. And I was looking, I wonder, what are all these people writing down? What are they all? And then, of course, over time, I got to see, oh, they're writing down notes to give feedback to people. They were writing down evaluations. They were doing the various roles of grammarian and such, and a general evaluator. And so they were providing all this feedback. So it was a way to just make sure people were getting feedback. It just surprised me at the time.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. When I asked the international community, there were a lot of people who said their first impression was not a good one, and they usually ended up in a different club. One person said they ended up driving to a club that was 3 hours away rather than going to the one in their own town because they liked the other one better. So it's something to realize. We want to be the club that we want people to go to. We want our club to be something we would be comfortable in coming to. Thank you. If you have other comments on what brought you into Toastmasters, what your first impressions were, feel free to leave those comments in the chat. Our next portion we will talk about is understanding. There are many challenges that come in an open house, and one of those is communication. Communication between the members, setting roles. For our last open house in Dallas Toastmasters, I had the opportunity to lead off, and I decided I would not do it all on my own. I've done that before, where I plan everything on my own, and it usually doesn't turn out right because we're not coordinated. Communicating with everyone, I selected one of my pathway projects to be organizing a group of people and leading an event. And I had my project committee, I had my guidance committee from another club giving me advice on how to proceed. And this I found was very helpful in making sure everyone was involved in the event, and it became a roaring success. Another challenge is making sure you have a speaker that does not blow everyone away and make people think I could never do this myself, but also a speaker who would be respectable. Sometimes it's important to have a guest speaker come in. And in Dallas Toastmasters, Lori had asked, actually PJ, who's on the call tonight, and PJ agreed to come and give a speech in a different club. So reaching out to other clubs to have a guest speaker can be helpful as well. It's also important to understand our club's unique qualities, because we have uniqueness in our clubs. We have our strengths, and understanding that can help us in promoting the club. We have, I'm sorry, Larissa Yang, who just joined us tonight. And she is a member of PR Masters. And PR Masters is a great way to learn how to promote your club. They have many resources that they share freely with people. They assist people. Also, I recommend joining their meetings to learn some ideas on how you can promote your club. Because if you understand where your members come from, you understand how to get the word out about your event, you will be able to promote your event. Facebook could be an excellent format for you, or perhaps you're a corporate club and perhaps you have an intranet. Waffle Toasters has an intranet of 10,000 people in Nike. They have 3 clubs in Nike, and they are very successful in inviting people out to their meetings through that intranet and other advertisements that they can place in their community newsletters. Perhaps some of your members are employees of the state in certain departments, and perhaps they have newsletters and events. This is another reason why utilizing your team and having different people give ideas. I don't have the access to all of these things, but members of my club do, and they are able to help us out in spreading the word far and wide. Connection, understanding that connection is important. In an online meeting, you might have a person assigned to chat with each guest, and that way they can, just like in an open house, sit by the person and help them to understand what is going on in the meeting. These are very important things to utilize here. What are some of your ideas on what needs to be understood for an open house? What understanding can help us with? What are some of your challenges with open houses? Lori?
Thank you, Brent. I think the biggest thing, and I was going to say this earlier when I talked about the foundation, is that to give yourself plenty of time. I think that's the biggest key that has been a struggle in some of the open house events I've been a part of, is that you think you have enough time. And so you're not intent on doing all of your details, on course, on a project plan. And so, pretty soon it's like, oh my gosh, it's 2 weeks away. You still have things to do. So giving yourself plenty of time.
Excellent. In the chat, Ellen posted that you need to have your guest packets ready ahead of time so you can review it and see if you need to add or subtract more packets. But another thought that I have on that is that with your guest packet, consider having a president's letter. So a letter from your president to the guests, because that will help them feel more welcome and more believable, just a personalization of that guest packet. Jim says involve the entire club in planning the event, not just the officers, and then suddenly saying, oh, hey, here's the event. Excellent. I find people bring guests more often when they say, hey, I'm taking part in this, come watch me. And the person comes along with. These are good ideas. Keep them coming in the chat. Understanding, very important. Now the N part of fun. Start now. As Lori said, it's very important. There is currently a D7 incentive. And Jim, am I correct? Is it once per quarter that the district, if you follow the rules and advertise a month beforehand of your event, you are able to advertise and have the district boost up to $50 of your advertisements. It's
Right.
an excellent thing.
And as long as the club is planning the event in advance, so you get it on the district calendar a month in advance. Reason for that restriction of putting it on the district calendar a month in advance is so that we know that you're taking the time to plan the event, not just suddenly saying, oh, we're going to have an open house next week.
Exactly. Because in planning ahead, we're able to get more people involved with that, and more new members, more networking goes on during that extra time that we have, new opportunities. I have asked several people who have let me know, hey, have you gone to the businesses? Because going to businesses who have employees, they're getting back from 2 years of talking to no one. How about joining a Toastmasters group and learning how to communicate with people again? At various different opportunities. Nextdoor is a resource that our Dr. Phyllis Harmon, our district, actually has an account that clubs can utilize to advertise on a Meetup, which is another resource. And we have an account, so you don't have to go out and buy one. You can utilize the D7 Toastmasters. We need every team member, and that's why it's important to do it now. And sometimes it seems like the same person heads up the open houses year after year, month after month. This can be a bad thing. And I would recommend that you utilize your new members, ask them to help out, give them opportunities to serve, because that will help them to want to learn more, to become more involved, perhaps even as an officer. And then as an officer to lead up new opportunities and become a leader eventually. Projects for level 4 and 5, as well as some level 3 projects, could include helping out with an online event or a open house. Those are things to be sure to keep in mind and to remember. So fun. My next question to everyone, and feel free to write in chat or to answer in person. What are some fun events that you have had? One of them that we had in Toasting Excellence, we had a party with drawings. And so we handed out certificates to people. We had tickets. And so you would receive a certain number of tickets for being a guest or for bringing a guest. And there were some really good prizes actually at the end. We actually went out to businesses and asked if they might donate some prizes or gift certificates, and had good success with that. Fred, go ahead and unmute yourself, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Something one of my first home clubs did is we like to have everybody, the members and the guests, tell us something they don't know about and put it in a basket. And then we pull it out of the table topics session when we read it off, and then we try to guess who it is. And whether we guess it or not, the person who put it in there gets to speak about it. So even the guests, whether they realize it or not, have just participated in our meeting, and it makes it fun.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else like to share something they've done to make their meetings, their open house fun? So Maren, I was hoping you would
Sure,
raise.
thank. Yeah, we put on a lot of events, and a lot of them are generated by our members. So if it's exciting to our members, then they're excited about it, and they're more likely to invite people. So last year we found out that one of our members really enjoys magic, does magic himself, and that a member's daughter was actually on Penn and Teller's Fool Us. We brought her in as a special guest. Our own member showed us his trick, and then we did a giant promotion of it to bring in more people. And it was an experiment too, to see how we could work as a team in order to promote further out. And it really was quite successful. But I have to say, this year, our meetings have landed on the holidays, and keeping those meetings open has really drawn a lot of guests. So on Christmas Day, we actually had like 5 or 6 guests. Pretty amazing. So think about those as opportunities too.
That's great. Thank you. And I think it's Maren, but I probably said Maren. I apologize. Okay, great. I'll learn. Thank you. Feel free to put your answers in the chat there. One of the things that I believe as, actually I want to move on to the next part here. So I have some examples to share with you. Now, we had talked about our own first impressions. I had actually attended a meeting at Toasting Excellence, which I'm a member of now, 20 years ago. I was looking for the perfect club for my needs. I was a starting out business person in chiropractic, and they said, you need to go join a Toastmasters club so you can learn how to present. I'm bilingual. I was looking for a bilingual Toastmasters club. There weren't any in Oregon. In fact, I would have had to travel to Florida for even a Spanish language club, which was not practical for me in Oregon. What I did was I found a Toastmasters club that was accepting to me and had people who said, you know, if you can't find your own Toastmasters club, you can make one, you can build one. The thought that I have is sometimes we're so focused on our own open house event or gaining a member that we forget that our club might not be the one or the only one for that member. Maybe they're not available our day. Pass them on to another club. Help them find what they needed. Adele Edwards at the time, O'Neill now, she guided me to learning how to build a club, and we built a strong bilingual Toastmasters group that met for many years. At one point, unfortunately, I was unable to attend on the club that I met on that day. But later on, I remembered that kindness of the Toasting Excellence, and I returned to that. There's an example. Waffle Toasters, I had mentioned before, is a club. They advertise through the intranet in their business, in their company, and attract people in that way. Dallas Toastmasters had an event. They had people come from actually as far as Boise, Idaho, as they are still meeting online as members of the club. finding different ways to attract people. Within Dallas, they found that there was a community bulletin board as well as a newspaper that we were able to advertise through for free. Hosting community events can be a free thing. The Dallas Toastmasters Club, we took advantage of the District 7 opportunity, and were able to share our event on the D7 website on the calendar. And thanks to Jim Robinson for helping us out with that, we were able to have a $50 boost to our club, and it spread our reach throughout the Dallas area. We had a guest come from that, specifically from that boost, who then brought somebody else into the club along with. And advertising on the District 7 website, we had another Toastmaster who was from outside of the Dallas who had found that through the District 7 website and was interested in coming to the club as a guest as well. A New Horizons Club. I spoke with Joe, and he said a couple of things that really struck me and hit me. One is to make sure the members feel safe and the guests feel safe. I never thought about that. But if your club is meeting in a sketchy area of town, or if people are harassing each other, he also mentioned stalking guests is not a good thing for promoting success in gaining members. So making sure your club is a safe environment, that people feel safe in your club, is very important. And I appreciate that. So New Horizons. Toastmasters, I want you to share some of your thoughts right now. We're coming up on the question and answer period, but I have a few questions for you. And I'd love for you to take a few moments to write in chat so you can save this chat for later. But I want you to think about, either from what you've learned tonight or what you're doing as a club, what would be your next step in making your open house or online events more successful in the future? So explaining internal jokes so no one is missing out, that's important. Following up with guests, that's an important thing. Sending them an application and teaching them how to fill out the application, that's important. Keep your local club officers as local club officers so that they have time to focus on the club rather than being spread out throughout their division or area responsibilities. That way they can focus on the club. And starting your planning now for your next online event. That's very important. It can take a month before you can find your guest speaker. You've given them a topic, they can prepare your speech. It can take a month and you're still ironing out the details that you want to be promoting on your advertising. So planning well in advance. Maybe the speaker that you want is only available at a certain time of the year. So maybe you'll want to go with a different speaker, but go with that speaker for another time of the year. Putting together a written plan for each component of the open house. That is part of some projects, is planning an event and putting together the different written plans. Very important. Having consistent, good and fun meetings. Jim Robinson is putting together a plan where, I'm sorry, Jim, I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, Jim Robinson, where different members of the district can reach out and support a club for a month after the open house. And that way they can help that club in sustaining the new members so that the guest doesn't come one week, there's 45 people there. The next week, there's 2 people there. That would be unfortunate. So contact your district about that opportunity. Being respectful and welcoming diversity. That was the second thing that Joe Harper mentioned to me. Their club, New Horizons, had been giving the pledge every week before a club meeting. And they looked at that and they said, well, why do we really do this? Are we excluding some people who would come into our club? So they decided to stop doing that. And now they have a higher diversity of people in their club. Sometimes we don't realize if we're excluding people. Don't forget to invite your past members and your past guests. I have in the past sent out a blast email to everyone all at once, but wouldn't it be even better for the members who remember someone to reach out and invite that person to come back? Delegating the early in the planning stages so your club members can be creative in their roles and assignments. Excellent. There are lots of really good ideas and I appreciate those. Jim has put in a link into the optimization support team, which helps out. So thank you for that link, Jim. PR Masters, as I had suggested, they're a wonderful club. They can help us out in PR. They keep minutes of their meetings and notes of their meetings. So you can, as well as videos of their speeches. So contact them, reach out to them. They can help you with ideas on how to reach out and promote your club meetings, your individual club meetings. This is our time for questions. Let's open up the microphones. What are your questions that you have for learning about club events?
So if you're coaching a club and your job is not to do all the work for that club, and you keep hinting to them about the incentive page, the post your event on the district calendar and ask for most, what more can you do to help said club?
That is an excellent question, Ellen. What do you do if you are the club coach? You're not to be doing everything for the club. You've hinted at certain incentives and they don't seem to be getting the picture. Does somebody have an idea on that? I'll bet Ellen has asked some other people this idea.
My thought is that one of the first things that has to happen is to ensure that the officers get training. But the reason for the training is so that the officers feel they have a way to be inspired and to inspire their club members. If they don't feel inspired, they're probably not going to be very effective. But if they feel inspired in order to really build things, then they can be very effective.
Thank you, Jim. I don't see anybody here who would remember this, so I think I can share this story in one of my clubs. I won't even mention which club. we were down to 8 members. We, I think, had gone 2 years without having a single educational award turned in for the entire club. We had had many people who had joined for a couple of months and then left. The same people were being officers over and over again. We didn't know what to do. We didn't have a club coach at the time. I'm not sure why, or even if we knew about it. But then there was a District 7 event that we went to. And one of our members came back and said, hey, there's this thing called a Triple Crown Award, where when you earn 3 awards, you get a crown. Many of us were like, well, we don't even earn 1 award every 2 or 3 years. How could we possibly do that? Our club started giving 2 or 3 speeches per club meeting, whereas before maybe there would be a speech and a whole bunch of table topics. Sometimes, Ellen, I think if we reach a little farther, I think for that, it was raising the bar for us. Wow, you could get 3 awards. We started getting awards that incentivized or made the guests think, hey, I really want to come back. I want to get an award as well. They would see the members were growing. The officers could see that we were growing again. I think that was our thing. We had become stagnant. And that may be the case with the club, Ellen, I'm not sure that you're referring to. It may be the case that they're just a little bit more stagnant, and maybe the incentives aren't what they want. Maybe something else will help them out. But I have found that the best way to get somebody to do something that you wanted to do is to make them think that it's their idea to do it in the first place. Because if they don't think it's their idea, or if I'm having somebody else tell me, do this, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But if it's my idea, then hey, it's going to be more likely to get done. Okay, another hand, another person want to share? PJ.
Yes, I have a question for you, Brent. Those couple of years that your club was, I'll say, stagnating, did you all happen to do a Moments of Truth?
Yes, in fact, we did a Moments of Truth every year.
And what did you learn from that? I mean, did that help you get back to your core values and why you were all doing this in the first place? I can't help but think that that would help give insight to what your original purpose was and get you back on track.
Yeah, I think it did. I think another thing that really helped us was we did a survey to our members, and we thought we knew as officers, we thought we knew what the answers would be, but we're like, well, we'll do the survey anyways. And what the main number one thing was is we need more members. We're getting burned out. And I think as officers, we didn't really see that we were stagnating ourselves, that we weren't getting our own personal growth from this. And so I think just realizing that we could still grow, we could still improve. We weren't just there to help the new members and the new people. We were there to grow ourselves. And I think by helping other people, we grow. This is true, but if we never work on our own educational accomplishments, we don't really go very far.
Yep.
So one question, sorry, was that it, PJ? Okay. One question was, what is your favorite event that you put on? I'm not sure if that was a question for me or for everyone, but one of my favorite events that we put on was actually our most recent event with PJ coming to visit Dallas Toastmasters. I think the reason that was is because everyone was pitching in and doing that together. We have Anna here, who's also a member of Dallas Toastmasters, along with Dennis. It was a fun event because I think everyone was pitching in. Everybody had a role on that. It renewed our enthusiasm. It was great to have PJ and Lori there. Lori's also a member of Dallas Toastmasters. And having Eldred there to visit, that was great as well. It was just very exciting. The Jerry, you had a question. Is there a link available of a recorded open house meeting? So this particular meeting, is that what you're talking about, Jerry?
No, I'm a regular open house like you gave, not this recorded session, which will also be helpful, but this as an example of an actual meeting.
An example open house meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to see a model of how
Yes.
to do it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes, that's a good idea. I will look for that. I think there's a way to send out an email to the participants of tonight's meeting. I'll see if I can do that, and Ellen, maybe you can help me in sending that out. I do know that the PR Masters event, they record many of their sessions. David Bones has recorded many of his speeches as well, and has a YouTube channel actually that he posts them on. Dr. Gwendolyn also records her events and shares them as well. I think that would be a great idea, just a model.
I mean, does it basically follow a typical Toastmasters meeting format with
yeah,
with a special speaker? Or?
The format for an open house would be a little bit different because you want to allow for time for networking. You want to allow time to introduce those guests who are very important. So generally, they limit the number of speakers. So we'll do one speaker, one presentation. But I think one of the most important elements is that the guests participate, and they can participate in table topics. So that would be an important part, and making sure to have an evaluation as well. But cut a lot of the unnecessary chatter. Maybe the themes wouldn't go as long. If there's a themed meeting, maybe the Toastmaster wouldn't talk as much, but just keep the meeting moving. People who run their roles, like for example, the timer would want to explain their role in a way where the guests would understand. The table topics master would want to explain, hey, you have an opportunity as guests to speak. I may call on you. You can decline, that's okay. And to explain what really we're doing, we're speaking from 1 to 2 minutes, really reiterate that. And things are generally more well explained at open houses, and we need to keep time for networking and for getting the food, as Ellen reminded. Great. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. I do have time for one more question, and it'll be time for me to wrap up.
Brent, I have a question for you. How do you measure a successful open house? Because I've seen open houses where they had an open house. Everybody said, oh, it was a great open house. They didn't get any guests. You know, the members themselves had a good time because they had refreshments and cake and stuff. They thought it was a great open house, but they never got any guests. They never got any new members. And it's still called a successful open house. So how do you measure a successful open house?
Thank you, Lyle. That brings me to my final point and my conclusion, is that the open house success doesn't really matter. You're looking at me like, what's he going to say next? The reason I say that is because it's more of a process than a one event. The open house that we have advertised has now been maybe point number 1 or maybe point number 6 of somebody's hearing about Toastmasters. And point number 7 is when they're going to come and visit or come and join. So even though we don't have 5 guests at our particular open house, we have reached out. I think the more important thing is, did we do our homework? Did we set that foundation? Did we reach out? Did we learn how to reach out and invite a guest? Did we follow up with them? I have been to some open houses where we had no guests there, but the next week we had 6, and they just could not come to the original open house date. But I still would call it a success because we're still reaching out to those people. Now, on the other point, what would be the problem for the open house? A open house problem would be where people did not have a good foundation. They did not plan for a fun meeting. They did not have fun themselves. That could be a detriment. Having an open house where we say, hey, we're going to do all this and we do nothing. The thanking, I think thanking the guest speaker is a very important thing, and making them happy. Maybe even a gift for our speakers and our presenters, because that will encourage them to help out in the future. Maybe thanking the people who helped can be very helpful as well. So Toastmasters, I do recommend that you save the chat, because there have been very important and helpful links in there. This meeting is recorded and will be shared. I've really enjoyed speaking with you all, hearing your opportunities and your input. I have enjoyed this process. I encourage each of you to consider doing a learning lab as well in the future. But most of all, I really encourage you to keep it fun. Establish that foundation for your club of the open house events. Have them often, but understand some of the challenges that come up with the open houses. Understand the uniqueness of your club that you are going to promote to people. And most of all, do it now. Plan now. Keep it fun.